Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Practical Pet Business, where Lauren Grow and I talk about important things impacting your business, whether you're a retailer, you're a manufacturer, you're someone who's thinking about getting into the pet world on the business side of things. There's a lot to take under consideration. And Lauren, today we're going to talk about something that I think you and I get really overloaded with, which is I need to expand. I've got to make changes. I've got to. And totally understand it. But with all of those I've got tos and I need tos and I have tos, there comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of research that you got to do because whatever you're adding, product, service, etc., there's things you've got to know beyond that particular offering. What are some of those things? Because I know you have experienced that and I've experienced it as well.
Yeah, I love adding services. I think that creates foot traffic. And the more foot traffic, the better chance you have of increasing sales and increasing your customer base and, having bleed over from one uh thing to another. This service leads to buying that food, it leads to maybe having it delivered, that kind of thing. So, the normal one for most people, I know for me, I started off just being a pet supply store. And shortly thereafter, I think it was probably a year and a half or so, I added grooming. And whenever you're adding a service, there's a lot behind that. And whether it's grooming or boarding, which I also added at some point down the road, or daycare, which I also had, or training, which I had as well, or delivery, which I didn't have. But all of those things come with their own things that you have to consider. So, for example, it isn't just I need to find somebody to do this. There's a shortage of groomers nationwide. It's really important to have good groomers and make sure you're paying them so that they stay, so that they're happy. Make sure that you're providing good grooming services and that kind of stuff. But there's liability to consider. There's insurance costs that have to be considered. You do have to let your insurance company know that you're going to be doing grooming. Workman's comp has to be taken into account. Same thing with daycare and boarding. Training is a little bit different. I had an independent trainer that came in and did training, but I also had her do it outside the store in our parking lot after hours. So that, when I discussed it with my insurance company, there was the least amount of liability on me, and it was her business that she was really promoting. It was just going on in my parking lot. But if you're going to offer training and you're going to offer it in your store, you have to find out those things. Delivery, you have other things involved where you have to look at, is it your vehicle, your business's vehicle, or is it going to be the person who's delivering vehicle? There are things to consider with regard to that and costs. Insurance has to be looked at. You're liable if you have an employee that's doing delivery and they get into an accident because they're working on behalf of the business. So there's a lot of things to consider with that. I will say that a lot of people don't take into account checking with their individual cities or counties for what is restricted or what is required to do any of those services. And it may be nothing, but I know that for me, when I wanted to add boarding, because I was in a historic downtown area, it wasn't zoned for that. So I had to go through the whole permit process, get zoning approval, had to go before city council, had to make sure that, there were inspections and things like that. There was a lot involved and it was very time consuming. I couldn't have decided I wanted to do boarding today and on Monday offer boarding. It just wouldn't have worked that way. And you might get away with it for a short time, but if you want to advertise and you want to get the word out, you're gonna come up against that. So it's better to do it ahead of time. Not to mention your competition will definitely tell on you, because they want to stop that if they can. And that's what happened to me. They weren't able to stop it because I was already going through all the appropriate channels, but it was, a factor that I had to deal with. So there's a lot involved. Services are great, but it's just not a snap your fingers and add it to your list of offerings.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was going to jump in there. Um, Knew someone who really thought they had a great handle, great relationships on, uh, the city council and all the rest of that. Added something, not thinking there would be any kind of restrictions whatsoever, only to find out, and oh my goodness, the world of hurt that that caused. Because not only had they had this big marketing campaign and all the rest of it, launch, etc., and then all of a sudden had to stop. And so to have to explain that after they already were out there with the news, just really was a huge disappointment and an honest miss for them. Um, so yeah, just such great advice there, Laura. You got to be looking into all those rules, all those regulations. And then also too on the side, the factor is do you have the insurance for it? We talk about the personnel. It's hard to find sometimes, oh, we've got a shortage of this, we've got a shortage of that. But is it even covered? Is it in some cases, I know I've had some manufacturers who have had to reprint products and labels because they were shipping products into municipalities or states where there were certain requirements. And so as these stores were calling, there was the wrong assumption that their products certainly wouldn't end up in these folks' stores that shouldn't be selling it. It didn't just affect the stores, it affected those manufacturers as well and caused a lot of problems for them. So it really is something where you've got to be on top of all that. And like I'm very much like you. I love to see the expansion. It lets your people know you are continuing to look for quality solutions for the things that impact them and their pets. So that's a tremendous positive. The downside is if you don't do all the research, you don't do all the work ahead of time, you can harm yourself. It's one thing not to have some sales from it. We try things, some things really embraced by the public, others aren't. But when you miss because of a rule, a regulation, a law, etc., and you've got to stop, you also hurt your credibility. And that's
Yeah.
something that you could control and you could get out in front of. And so to me, I really tell a lot of folks when they say, I'm thinking about this, I'm excited for you. Have you done all the research on, oh, yeah, yeah, no, I know all about it. And then no, 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 let me finish my sentence. Have you done all the rules and research on, can you have that at your location? Are you insured for it? Are
Mhm.
you able to, get this, store it the way it's required to be? So all of these different things. Yeah, I think so. Which a lot of times will tell me, oh, I just hit a nerve on something that I
Right.
just, and there's nothing wrong
Think
with that.
about the cost. Think
Yeah.
about the cost though. If I
Oh,
had not gone through the proper channels and had just decided to start building out a boarding
yeah.
facility just to find out, oh, you're not permitted for that. I
Right.
mean, my gosh, that's a lot of overhead, or to decide that you're going to put in all your grooming equipment and everything, and then to find out that that city doesn't allow for that because of the water that it generates, and that sort of thing. It's so much better to just do that work to start with. I know we want
Right.
to rush to the what a great idea,
Right.
and rush to the execution, but without going through the proper channels, it's costly. And to your point, the
Yeah.
credibility issue is a big deal.
And I think the thing about it too is that there is a reality of there's no shortage of great ideas, but great ideas without great execution. do not generally generate great results. And that's the part of it that I would just say, like, let's make sure we're doing that legwork ahead of time, like you said. The other thing too is, which has surprised me sometimes, where I'll say, "Have you previewed any of this for some of your best customers?"
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer or you're a store or any of it. It's yeah, well, yeah, no, I hear them talking about it. I hear them. No, no, no. Have you previewed it as you're going to get into this? Because
Mhm.
there are things that even I'll be like, oh my gosh, hey, I called you and I was like, I want to do hyperbaric chambers in my backyard, and we're bringing horse. And you were like, yeah, that's a interesting idea, Rob. And then you talked me off that cliff. I still love it though, but I cannot do it where I currently live, even though I've got an acre. So that being said, um, there's no shortage of great ideas. That, but do your customers really want that? Because there are a lot of great ideas where you don't have to generate and create their interest. They already have an interest.
Right.
And so, and I love this brings up an interesting thing. I just had this conversation with someone um, that I think we both know. And I said, when's the last time you did a survey? You got this great, media, you've got an old school email list and you got your social media and all that. When's the last time you just asked what would they like to see you add? Not necessarily, oh, this is what they're buying or this is what I'm seeing when they post their pictures, so I think I need to get into X, Y, or Z. What would they like you to add? What would they feel better? Because I know this, if you were adding it to your store, I was much more likely to have an interest than, because I knew you did all the work. I knew I could feel comfortable if Lorin and your staff, who I knew very well, if you all were talking about something, at a minimum, I should listen. But quite often I'd be like, wow, I'm already doing that over here. But I absolutely know that my vetting plus Furry Faces vetting, holy smokes, I feel way more comfortable. Except maybe in the hyperbaric chambers, but I'll leave it there.
Well,
So,
the other thing too that I think, because I with what I do now with my consulting business and I talk to retailers, it's really interesting how many of them don't do their homework on who else does that in their area and how do they do it. Because everybody has to your point about the ideas of great ideas with not necessarily great execution. There's been a lot of the same idea by a lot of people. Burger
yeah,
joints. How many burger joints are there and burger chains and things
two.
like that? Not here in Texas. But there's only one here. Um, it's are you going to do it different? What are you bringing to the table? How do you make it successful? And the only way you're going to know that is to look and see what other people are doing and get input from people who have utilized services elsewhere. What did you like and what did you not like? You don't need to tell me where it was.
Oh,
Just in your experience, what were the things that were positive? What were negatives? Again, don't tell me where you were. And really take a look at, I had a conversation with a client, and while I'm on the initial conversation and on the phone with them, which was the initial consultation, I'm on the computer. And she said, there's nobody in our area that is going to do this. And I said, well, what about this place? And then I see there's also this place, this place, this place. How many miles is this place from where you're talking about? 4 miles? Yeah. Do you know about that place too? And there's like dead silence on the phone.
right.
And come to find out, she hadn't even done that to look and see who else was doing what it was she wanted to do. And you could do that. You want to just jump out there and do your own thing. That's what's great about this country. You can do whatever you want to do, and good, bad, and different. Those chips are going to fall where they are, and you're going to roll with them. Um, But if you want to be successful or have a better shot at being successful, you need to see what's going on in your area. Do that due diligence. I know before I even opened my store, I spent a year and a half doing research of for what I wanted to do. Was that going to be a good fit? Was there a need for it? I wasn't even 100% sure what I wanted to do. So I'm sort of testing the waters on a lot of different areas because I was new and it was, at the start of almost 20 years of a store. So I think that people rush into things because they feel like the timing is right. Well, if the timing is only right now and it's not going to be right 3 years from now, that's a big red flag. So take a second and start to do this homework and really dig into who else does this? What do they do? How do they do it? What's the feedback on how they do it? What's the experience like? Is there a need? Is there enough business to sustain X number of places doing this way? And really be sure before you jump into it, and then rock and roll and put your own flavor on it, your own spin on it, and do it better than anybody else did it. I know for me, the thing that's really set us apart for everybody else is we did a loyalty program that was untouchable. And it was phenomenal. And I knew nobody else would touch it because they didn't understand it. And it was so great that it got so many customers shopping with us that there was irate calls coming into distributors and manufacturers of you must be supplementing this store for them to be able to do this. And why aren't you doing that for me? And to only hear, we don't have anything to do with it. That's her loyalty program. And they were told everything from, we don't believe you, and I'm going to kick your product out because there's no way. And I had just, found something that I was like, I wonder if that would work, and tried it, and it blew up. And I thought, oh, yeah, this works great. And it was my loyalty program for years and years and years. And the people who bought my store continued with that loyalty program because they got it. They got the reasons behind it and what made it work. And, other people could have done it. It wasn't a secret. And I think I even shared it on more than a couple of occasions. And they just didn't get the understanding. They weren't at the understanding of how that was going to work. And you need to sort of be sure for whatever services and whatever things you're adding that you've really thought it out and you're 98%, because you're not going to be 100% until you execute it. So you've got to be 98%, 95% worst case, that you have a pretty good handle on it and you're going to be successful. But you're not going to get there if you don't take the time to research it and dig in.
Yeah, you just hit on something that it perked my ears up just big time, which is the folks who bought your place continued it. And it's so interesting because we haven't really talked about that element of things where a company gets bought typically because it's doing successful things. And the tendency quite often is for the new owner to make, in many cases, drastic changes or things that then, you know, eat away and chip away at what made that company attractive to purchase in the first place.
Right.
And so, that's a kudos to them for having the awareness and keeping that going. Certainly, there are always things that can be and should be adjusted, but it is unique to me the amount of times where I'll work with someone and they'll say, "Yeah, well, we got this and we changed this and we changed that." I'm like, just stop for a second. I just want to understand, why did you think buying that was a good idea? And I'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, I totally see it. Makes great sense. And then you bought it and then you made what changes again? Well, we blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this disconnect here. Because in the one side, you're telling me this is why it was such a great opportunity for us and we saw it. I didn't hear a lot of negatives there. But it seems like you then came in, bought it, and changed
Right.
And now what we're trying to fix is some of those things that you changed. And not saying you can't or shouldn't change, you should. But I just feel quite often folks are almost, well, now we got to put our own stamp on it instead of taking some time.
Right. Well,
And
that's it. It's the time. The people who bought my store, I said, if you change nothing and you just step right in, I mean, everything is in place. You know, the store has been around a long time and it should just continue the way it is. And they took the time to decide to get comfortable, to get a feel for it and decide, I think we'll change this, and maybe we'll tweak that. And they wanted to put their own feel and their own stamp on it. I mean, the fastest change they did was change the paint, to their color scheme idea from mine. And it looked great. It was fantastic. And that already made it feel a little bit different. It was enough of a change though for the customers who were like, how much are you going to change? And they were like, okay, the paint's good. Yeah, we like that. Okay. Oh, these people are cool. Because customers need time too to get comfortable with change, to feel like, well, we've been shopping here for years. We don't really want anything to be different. And then they find out, well, these people are great and this is going to be okay. And I really like them. And this is good. And then they start implementing their changes, and what they get is acceptance and support from the customers instead of that, oh my God, they came in and they changed so much and I don't even recognize it anymore. I have to find a new place to
yeah,
shop.
and that's such a good point too, because that's also the question I will ask when folks will call me and say, well, we're thinking about buying this place or buying this product, and we want to reshape and read it. And I'll say, let me ask you, where is your just do it yourself point? Because if you're going to change so much that essentially you're reinventing the wheel, it better be a darn good name, because everything else you're telling me about it, it's going to be unrecognizable.
Mhm.
And so why not put that same time, effort, resource, etc., into just creating your own version rather than trying to tear down what was built,
Right.
So I love that.
Well,
I
I've
love
had
it.
a couple of stores locally here in Texas that were offered to me, and I was like, no, because if I was going to do this here, I know how to do this. I
Right.
wouldn't walk into something existing. I'd start fresh from the
Sure.
ground up because I already know what I would want to do. I don't want to come in off of, some other store's legacy, good, bad, or indifferent, and reshape that. I want to create something of my own, and a lot of people who don't want to do that, that's fine. Either way is fine. But
It,
know, that when you go in to come in and just take, something and cut a wide swath in something existing and not expect there to be fallout is unrealistic. I don't
yeah.
know how we got onto that subject from adding services, but that's the way our
Well, I
conversations
just,
go
yeah, I
oftentimes.
did. It was an interesting note on that transition. So I like that. There's so many things. That's why we talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why we're going to end this right here, because I know you and I are like, we're going to go for another hour if we don't. So, folks, you've gone through this. You have been looking at expanding, whether it's products, services, whatever it may be. Share with us your approach, what you decided, how you approached it. You can do that by sending us an email at practicalpetchat@gmail.com. Share it on all of our social media networks as well. We're happy to do that as well. But again, thank you for joining us. We know you've got a lot on your plate. Apparently now too, I'm going to have to look at painting my place, because that was the call out there. Start with the paint. Did I miss this? I don't know. Let me know with an email if there was more to this episode to you all than start with the paint. Hopefully there was, because Lorin gave us a lot of great golden tips there. Lorin, thank you as always. Really appreciate it.
Same, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.